we educationists, we find the prices very high, and then you cannot yet put a lot or increase the school fees because our parents, they don't have any more income they can add to their already bad situation.
Some other remote villages have very, very, very bad roads which actually don't promote trade. This actually also brings a lot of depreciation in trade arenas in the local areas.
Country, I don't know why it's going. Because everything is collapsing. Everything is collapsing. There are things like these people who are studying, like those people who finished at Makere, they are not even getting jobs. I don't know what is happening to our country. Maybe everything is being sold out. I don't know.
I think all is okay. People are working their nights, people are moving, and the extent of the people moving shows that actually it's business account and the economy is picking up. I think that's all I have to say.
More investment should be done in technology and so on, rather than humanities. I think science and technology is the way forward. As Uganda, economically, yeah, but it's in a slow motion. Right track, but in a slow motion.
Things are terrible. Can also see, especially if one has a family. It's really taxing.
I find that prices have gone high, and like me, a civil servant, my salary is constant. It's not increasing, yet the cost of living is going high.
Every day they're hiking, different prices. We are tired of those different prices. That's what I think.
Welcome back. You're on The Spot, and those are the views from the public. And they are speaking candidly about what they think of the economy. Retired Colonel Kizza Besigye, you were speaking of a tsunami sweeping across this country. You have had the ordinary Ugandans. What's your take on what they have to say about the state of the nation's economy?
Well, I hope they didn't select, the characters like me. The president says these characters. I hope the people you selected were not just characters.
Ours was a random search.
But you can see what we are talking about. What we are talking about is that the president and possibly those who advise him in government, if he is advised at all, are totally detached from what is going on the ground in the population. One does not need to really, come here to know that the situation of our people is desperate. It's totally desperate.
And interestingly, you're using the same words to describe something very different from the president. The president says those who have eyes to see can see the massive and tremendous.
But this is what I'm saying. We are looking at two different things. I told you there are two economies. I'm sure President Museveni, the insensitivity, recently, you had him ordering a new jet, which is going to cost you 80 billion.
I don't want to think of the figures.
In a situation where, his own citizens cannot find a meal. Recently, we squandered 300 billion plus on CHOGM activities. At a time when the entire eastern northern part of Uganda were under floods, and the intervention of government up to date is non-existent.
The president talked about an increase of expenditure for the defense in this financial year, and yet he's talking about security having been curbed to almost zero threat. How does that come into play?
Precisely. It's a contradiction.
But he also adds in the issue of the police to back up the UPDF claim because of crime.
Ugandans, I hope, have by now realized that we have two presidents in one. The one president who talks and the one president who acts. And they are totally different people. The one who talks about some things, but the one who acts does completely different things. And so, you have, somebody saying, oh, we shall now, recently, this whole problem of food prices. He's been talking about investing in agriculture, but what happens in the budget? What he says and what he does.
Strongest political party by all standards of ratings. We've given you the chance to criticize very strongly the State of the Nation address. But if you had been elected in 2006, this would have been your second State of the Nation address. Probably the same problems facing Ugandans would be there glaringly, would need a stronger economy and the like. What do you think are the solutions, the problems Uganda faces today? But
we offered our program indeed very clear and vividly to the country through our manifesto.
Your manifesto here, I have a copy of where you're talking about creating economic opportunities for all Ugandans. Yes. And that quarter section you say, just a moment, Kano, FDC will pursue an inclusive and development-focused economic agenda. We will focus on agriculture and rural transformation to effectively exploit our natural resource base.
Precisely.
This is precisely what the president is saying he was doing.
No, but the question is what he says he would want to do, but not what he's doing. So the investment in agriculture, it's a question of priorities. Let me wrap it in a nutshell.
You have the chance.
First of all, reduce the wastage in government. The cost of public administration in Uganda is bleeding the country to death. Because all this is money which is really spent on consumption needlessly. We in our program talk about drastic cutting of public administration expenditure.
So you didn't have as many advisors, as many special assistants,
obviously
as
not.
Many districts?
And we've made it very clear. We would cut down not only in public administration, not only in the presidency, the cost in the executive, but look at even the size of parliament. In our own program,
we have 80 districts
now, and we've talked about it. It does not make sense, having starving people while you are keeping a parliament of 300 people and counting. In today's statement, he's talking about the new members of parliament he's going to have. I saw Zombo's district. That is, all those are members of parliament. Which is so the cost of public administration must be curbed, and that money directed into the areas that touch on the lives of people. We must invest in agriculture. Mm-hmm. We must invest heavily and urgently in infrastructure. In making sure that we have a working road network in the country, that we have a
rail system.
Yes, that we have a rail
water transport.
System.
You talk about it in your manifesto.
Look, there used to be even the ferries on the Lake Victoria. They are gone. We must
natural calamities. One just crashed with an iceberg or something on Lake Victoria. You can't know what it crashed in. But
so infrastructure.
There's a small risk here. Ugandans are listening to you speak very candidly. You have wonderful, and your oratory capacities are not in any question. Question is, if you were in the hot seat of power, so to speak, wouldn't you be the two-type president who has a wonderful program by way of speech, but his actions are contrary?
It is possible, and that's what I always tell the public, that don't just look at me or what I am saying. Demand accountability from me, and if I'm not producing, sack me for God's sake, sack me. Unless our population understands that presidents and governments are their servants, and that if they don't live up to their promises, they must be sacked. Here is a president who is sinking the country, year in, year out. Now here they are talking of the fourth term. He wants to go on for another 5 years.
Later we'll be asking you whether indeed you will be contesting against the fourth term.
The thing is, and that is where we are investing. We are investing in making the population understand their rights and how they can cause governments to account, including a government that I would be leading.
And a government change. Unfortunately, we have got our viewers who are very anxious to ask you several questions. And for the start, we have got Jane calling us from Bunga. Jane?
Good evening, Simon.
Good evening, Jean. You're on the spot. It's Kano Kizza Besigye.
Yes, thanks for coming and entertaining and hosting retired Kano, Dr. Kizza Besigye. I just wanted to find out from the retired Kano the agenda that NRM government initially had about the cooperative societies that were banished. Is it true that it was because there were UPC arrangement and therefore the NRM feared about their ingraining the members of the public at the time then?
Thank you so much, Jean, for that wonderful and concise question. Now we have got Mohammed from Masindi also to ask another question. You could please take note, Kano. Mohammed? We lost Mohammed there. Jean is asking why you came with the agenda to admonish cooperatives. You were in government in 1986. You came with President Yoweri Museveni. What was your agenda in banning cooperatives, which now, as the Forum for Democratic Change, you seem to be holding very dear to your chest?
Yes, as NRM, in fact, including the 10-point program, which brought us into government in 1986, there was an emphasis of cooperative development.
Then later, what happened?
Well, I was no longer in government, and I think this government can answer for itself. But you know what I have been saying all along is that, frankly, I suspect that it has been a deliberate program of this government, not to fight UPC developed programs, but to impoverish the population, because those cooperatives were strong
financial
economic bodies.
Kano will be getting to that later, but let's take Irene calling us from Mutungo. Irene, are you still with us? Kano Kizza Besigye, just before you go ahead, we seem to have lost Irene there. You know, Uganda, like you said rightly, is suffering from dysfunctional health systems, a dysfunctional education system, a dysfunctional everything.
It's a failed state for all intents and purposes.
When you go out there, you were in Arua, you have recently come back from Murhama, why don't you capitalize on those structural issues that affect the day-to-day Ugandan? When we read
capitalize them in doing what?
When we read this, you read press reports of what you made as a statement at a rally in Arua, you seem to be talking about matters which are so abstract, like human rights,
no.
And
but
like what,
one thing which and indeed, thank you for giving me this opportunity. There is a very, very serious problem in the media. Because
just before we get into the media, we have David from Jinja. David?
Hello?
Yes, you are live on the spot.
Thank you. I'm Okaimade from Jinja. I want to ask, we the people of Busoga, we are disturbed about this Bonabagawale. The president, when he came in Busoga, he was talking over again giving 6 people per parish, which does not mean Bona. So, like the other UPE, which in Busoga they call Bonabakone, we also see Bonabagawale, like they are abusing us, it's Bonabagawale, just disturbing us. So, comment, Kano.
James from Muyenga is on the line with us. Thank you so much, David, for that comment. James, what's your take?
Kashata, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I thank you for hosting that gentleman.
You're most welcome. Your very brief question or comment?
On my comment on him, is he has got good ideas. At least if we cooperated with the government, it would make sense to make a better government. But other than that, Uganda is full of hypocrites, can never give him voice to the president.
Thank you so much, James, for that comment. And we have Mohammed from Masindi. Please, I would love to advise our callers that you reduce the volume of your TV, or better off, switch it off so that we don't get a lot of feedback, so we're able to listen to you carefully. Mohammed?
Hello.
Yes, you're live on the spot on NTV.
Yeah, Mohammed, I'm calling from Machindi. Good evening to you, gentlemen in the studio.
This is the retired Kano Kizza Besigye.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, Kano Kizza Besigye, if suppose he's talking in terms of the failure of this government, I think let him start since when he came out of the government. But if he talks about he was part of it, of how the problem has been going on, I think he's being unfair to himself. Kano, try to be fair for yourself. criticizing since you left the government and up to now. But if you're criticizing 20 years, 22 years, it means nothing. Thank you very much.
I didn't quite understand you, Mohammed from Makindye, but where we have Sam calling us from Entebbe.
Yes, hello.
A very brief question or comment, and please switch off the volume of your TV.
All right then. My first question goes to Dr. Kizza Besigye. You talk hard and with a lot of strength. I mean, when you become the president, how will you roll us?
Thank you so much for that question.
What was the question?
That you seem to be speaking with quite a lot of strength. How about when you become president? Our final caller in this session is Sydney. Sydney?
Good evening, Mr. Besigye. I would like to ask one question, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You have talked about cooperative societies being shut down after you had left the government. If I'm not wrong, they were closed before you left the NRM government. Please enlighten me on that picture. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, retired Colonel. Let's give very brief reactions
well,
to these
maybe
comments.
If I
before
will
we
start
can...
with that, I would like to, I think that what he's asking may also be somehow related to what Muhammad was talking about, though I didn't understand his question. I suspect he was saying, is it right for me to criticize what the NRM did when I was also
part of them?
A part of it. First of all, the record. The record is that I was in government, meaning in the cabinet from 86 to 1990.
A straight 4 years.
Yes, 4 years. And up until that time, we even had the Minister of Cooperatives, specifically for cooperatives. And the agenda for cooperative development was still going on. But let me also say this, that, even if you are actually in government, and indeed you are, you accept, responsibility based on being part of it, collective responsibility. But it must still be understood that you can be part of something but differ from it. Differ from the policies of the government, and until you protest and indeed leave the government,
as you did,
yes, you can be assumed to be supportive of those policies. But as I said, there is one person responsible for the executive. That is the president. The president takes credit for all what goes on in the executive and takes responsibility for what goes on in the executive. And therefore it's wrong, even of him, of the president, when things go wrong, to say, oh, this is the other minister is the problem. That now he's writing to the Minister of Health about hospitals.
Let's just answer the questions and see how it goes.
The president must take direct responsibility. He has no business going back to the public and saying, the problem is the minister. He's your minister, for heaven's sake. He serves at your pleasure. If he's not performing, remove him. Don't have to plead with the public. What can the public do? Now, the other question of Bagagawale.
It was actually a comment. He seems to be perturbed.
Yes, but rightly, there is. I had explained this. Maybe he had not caught up with us at that stage.
Yeah, that would lead us to ask how you would definitely have a plan to make every Ugandan richer. As the FDC, how would you have done it differently from what we see as Bona Bagagawale?
I actually told you that first of all, don't take away the money from him in order to bring it back in pretending to deal with his poverty. Leave the money with him. Reduce taxes. Reduce taxes.
How would you then be able to carry out the other functions of the state, like providing him with the basic social services if you're not getting enough tax base?
You see, the amount of taxation that you are taking from him in order to deal with the Bagagawale itself, is what I'm talking about. Because they are taxing him for the hospitals, which of course the service he doesn't get, but they tax him for it. They tax him for the roads, they tax him for all this. And on top of all that, they tax him for bagagawale. What I'm saying is, tax him for only the essential services, common user services, and therefore reduce the taxation, so that he stays with the money and uses it in his own wisdom to improve on his welfare and to develop. Rather than taking it and then bringing it with all kinds of lectures. Now you use 1 acre to plant apples. I don't know. You use 1 acre to plant.
Have some pigs. Some upland rice.
That's nonsense. Just leave the fellow with his money, because you got it from him. Leave it with him.
But seriously,
give him technical services. Give him technical services which he can access. Like used to be extension services. If he wants advice, he goes to his Gombolola place and he asks for advice and so on and so forth. Rather than the president, gallivanting all over the country with his vice president that they are teaching Bagagawale and so on. The president, and that is where they lose it, actually.
And other than that, is like indeed I asked earlier.
That is one, as I said. First of all, let people use their own initiative and their own capacity, their own money, which they have earned themselves. The money he is using to fly around teaching them, they made it without his advice. He collected it from them. Leave it with them. Don't fly around teaching Bagagawale. Leave it with them.
Before we take another break,
let them use it.
Before we take another break, Colonel, let's answer that very personal question that came in from one of the callers who seems to have a problem with the way you articulate your issues.
Yes, well, it's now, I think by now, a common comment to suggest that I am an annoyed person. If I get into government,
The first thing you do is shake up the state and
yes,
get rid of perceived and even imagined.
And as I have said, and I say it lightly, but I frankly mean it. We have different demeanors, we have different
temperaments.
Not temperament, but some people will always be laughing. Others, have a more serious face to their bodies, and I happen to be one of those, maybe. But secondly, this whole thing of being a president is not about the president acting in his own, and I think they get worried because of what they see in Museveni being everything,
and also being able to crush any form of opposition, perceived or
yes, and he doesn't need to look like I look in order to do so. How many people have been killed, around by all these laughing fellows. So, but the more important thing is that, we should have systems work. The president must
the
be
FDC
the
look
president.
At building systems.
Yes, absolutely. That is the fundamental failure of this government.
I want us to put credit where it's due, Kizza Besigye. Someone has once argued to me that President Museveni is by and large a very successful leader for this country, but what he's failing to do now is manage his successes. That his policies are strong and good, but he has eventually metamorphosed himself into this kind of person that doesn't seem to have the grips and the ability to control and nurture systems so that they can work according to his good policies. What's your take on that? I think
it's deliberate. The systemless regime is a deliberate approach, because social scientists, I think, will know what we refer to by a patrimonial kind of regime, because instead of having a rule by systems and so on, it's personal. It's personal.
It look like the old kingdom.
Yes, it's personal rule, and that's.
We are going in for a very short break.
It's a deliberate kind of approach.
Let's take in a very short break right now. When we return, we'll continue to take on your calls. You're on the spot, Kizza Besigye, and we're discussing the State of the Nation address. We'll be right back. It's NTV.